Welcome to the Center for French Colonial Life. My name is Jeff Gioiorano. I'm the Executive Director. This is the new orientation and exhibit center to augment the historic sites that are owned by the National Society of Colonial Dames of America in the state of Missouri, including the Bolduc House Museum, Le Meilleur, Linden, Jean-Baptiste Valley. The purpose of this building, which is going to be opening up very soon, is to provide you with a context, to welcome folks, and to give them a better understanding of what life was like for the people who 200 years ago built the structures that are part of the historic campus. Let's go ahead and go on inside. Now keep in mind, it's a work in progress. We've still got some things that we're finishing up, but it's getting there, and I hope you'll find it interesting. Let's go ahead on inside. As I said, a major part of what we're dealing with here is about everyday life for the people who created and initially settled St. Genevieve, predominantly French, but also people of a lot of other backgrounds, including Spanish, German, American, and Scottish, and English. The Africans who came here both as enslaved workers and free workers. And they all together created a unique Creole culture that was very distinctive, but while it incorporated lots of traditions from different sources, at the heart of it, it was always French. And that's why a big part of what we're dealing with here are the people, like our habitant here, the farmer, man of clearly of French descent. And it's also a reminder that unlike, say, like St. Louis, where fur trade wasn't the main thing, the fur trade was something that was important here, but what was really important here was agriculture. This was the bread basket of New Orleans and other colonies. It was feeding them, it was incredibly fertile, and that's part of the story we're trying to tell. Now, a lot of the pieces that are on exhibit here in this permanent exhibit about the history of the community, how it got started, how Creole culture and identity got started. A lot of these things are pieces we had in the collection, but there's also some new things that we've acquired, and a lot of this is really exciting. One of the things, I don't know if you can see this up close, but this is an actual French coup from the 1750s. So during the time period when the French were controlling this area, and it's beautiful, beautiful coin. And a lot of people say, well, you know, oh, they just traded and bartered, they didn't use coins. But they did. Merchants brought coins, the government brought coins, but why they didn't show up here, aren't found so much, is because they got sent back to France. Coins were the way to, you make a fortune here, you send the coinage back to France, and that's, I think, one of the important elements of this story about initial French control. Another new piece that we had, this French hunting sword right here. Let's take a quick look at this. Very typical. They brought thousands of these to North America. They were made in France. They were traded to the Indians. They were used by the habitants when they're hunting, because it is literally a hunting sword that you shoot an animal and you have to finish it off, or there's a wild boar charging at you. But it's also a symbol of status. And I really like this. It's got an inscription on it about, on one side, it says, draw me not without reason, in French, of course, and on the other side, sheathe me not without honor. And I think that says a lot about the way these gentlemen looked at their role in life and their role in their communities. It's about duty and about honor. And the French period, of course, ends. French control comes to a halt, 1763, the end of the 7 Years' War, what we call the French and Indian War. And this part of the French Empire is transferred to their Spanish allies in exchange for what the Spanish had lost in supporting France during the war. And Spanish control is gradually established, but the Spanish don't try to make it in the image of the homeland. They're not trying to Hispanify this region, and they did a very good job of administering it. They kept it as a bulwark or a buffer zone against English and then American expansion. But the Spanish continued to work with the French who were here. The commandant, the civil commandants were mostly people of French descent, like the Valleys. And that's kind of what we talk about in this next area over here that we call the commandant's office. During the Spanish period, which lasts 40 years, a place like St. Genevieve might have 8 Spanish soldiers and some non-commissioned officers to help train the militia, who are all men mostly of French descent, and a military commandant like Cardabona. But the civil commandants were always local people, some of the local leaders, like Francois Valley Sr., Francois Valley II, Jean-Baptiste Valley, which is why here in what we call the commandant's office, one of the key things we have, besides some Spanish coins, is a Valley family sword, which was carried by these members of this French Creole family when they served the Spanish king as the administrators for the community, or when they helped went up to St. Louis and helped defend the region from the English during the American Revolution, when Spain was an ally of the Americans. So there's still this interweaving of cultures going on. The people here, in spite of the Spanish being here for almost 40 years, being good administrators, they brought prosperity, they did a good job they did a great job of protecting the region, but they still had a culture here that was French, that identified itself as essentially at the heart of it French. In addition to the permanent exhibit, we're going to have changing exhibit areas. The first temporary exhibit, which will be here for about a year, is about archaeology of the Illinois country. It will include some materials that were excavated in St. Genevieve, primarily on our own historic sites, but also materials from excavations in St. Louis, which will be in the cases that are arranged around the wall in here, and then excavations over on the Illinois side. And the emphasis here is about what we can learn about what everyday life was like from the things that we find in the ground. And I think our archaeologists, Laura Williams and Robert Masrum, who've overseen the digs at the Francois Valley, the second house, and behind Bolduc House, put this together, and I think people are going to find it really intriguing. One of the things that strikes me is when you look at some of these things that were dug out of cellars or refuse pits, and you realize There's still some of these bits, like the catches for shutters that you'll see on the historic buildings today, and you realize, yeah, they've been using this same kind of hardware for 200 years. Let's go on over to the Curatorial Lab. So one of the other things we'll have on the main floor of the museum is our Curatorial Lab, which is a workspace where we clean and sort and do minor conservation work on some of the things that we've acquired by loan or purchase or donation. And this is a place that when we have experts in here working, it'll be available. The doors can open up, people can come in and talk to the folks that we have working on things. And another way of making this an interactive and I think human kind of experience where we're learning from each other, we're sharing ideas, and one of the things that you'll notice is that we are not going to have a whole lot of technology. There's going to be some video, some audio, but there's not a whole lot of electronic bells and whistles here, and partly that's because I've worked in museums where you spend all your time fixing all the fancy mechanical and AV stuff. But it's also that we want to bring people together and give them an opportunity to have conversations. And it's all about lifelong learning and learning from each other and sharing ideas and information and considering the possibilities and asking interesting questions. And one of the things that I think that people will enjoy about this is that once they see the museum here, which will be free, and folks can come in and look around, get a context, then this is also where they can buy their tour tickets, just like we've always done. We'll have guided tours for which there will be a fee, but that's, you know, we have to be practical. But that the guided tours of Bolduc House and Le Meilleur are going to, I think, maybe make more sense to people once they've seen the museum and have a frame of reference for these stories and what they're going to be looking at in the actual historical buildings. The other thing that we're working on is that the Linden House, which is the house across the street from Bolduc, where we used to have our gift shop and our offices, that is going to be hands-on history house. We've got a team of our educators who've been particularly trying out things with our homeschool audience, interactive, hands-on kinds of activities. That's what's going to be in the building over there. We're going to start out later this summer opening that up on weekends, but it will be available for school groups, homeschool groups, and families to come in and learn about history in a very direct kind of way. And then the other thing that is going to happen is that eventually down the road, we've got to be honest, we've got to do some fundraising for this. The Francois Valley, the second house, the part of the house that still exists, is going to be turned, which is over on Gaburi, that's going to be turned into an exhibit about archaeology and understanding, peeling away the layers and understanding life in a different time, both through the archaeology below the ground and above the ground. And that's a few years down the road. But the thing is, this is going to be continually changing. There'll be new things, there'll be programs, different exhibits. A year or so from now, we'll be doing a new temporary exhibit to replace the archaeology one about Battle of St. Louis. And the key role that St. Genevieve militiamen played in that battle, which made a big difference for the future of the United States. But, you know, we'll talk about that more when we get to it. But I'm looking forward to having you come visit us. We're going to have our ribbon cutting on April 23rd, and then we will officially open to the public on the 27th. So we'll look forward to having you come by and come see how things are. Thank you all for coming. My name is Jeff Giuliano. I am the Executive Director of New France, the other Colonial America, which is the organization that manages the campus here, including Bolduc House, Lumiere, JBV, and this new building for the National Society of the Colonial Dames of America in the state of Missouri, which has owned these properties for now going on 60 years. And we are committed to continuing to move forward in taking care of the properties and interpreting them for the public, to make them useful for the community, and to also, while we're at it, have a lot of fun and make new friends. And we're glad that you're all here today. Welcome.
Thank you.
Few things just really quickly I want to say is, number one, this is a work in progress. And there are things that like signage. Funny story goes with the signs, but we won't get into that. There will be signage, there will be plants, there will be more in the museum, but there just comes a point where you gotta say, we're gonna open, and that's what we're doing. So it's a work in progress. The other thing I want to say is that this building, the Center for French Colonial Life, does not exist as a standalone entity. It's part of the whole campus. It's a combined experience that you come here, you get context that's going to help you understand why those buildings are so important, and the people and their lives and their stories are so fascinating. Help you understand it. That's its purpose. The other thing is, I want to mention, the whole campus is not a standalone thing. What we have here in St. Genevieve is truly remarkable, and especially when you take the critical mass of the campus of New France and Felix Valley Historic Site and the foundations buildings and everything, all taken all to the new learning center that's going to come in up the street. Put this all together, and it's going to be like pieces of a puzzle that fit together to tell a truly special story. So keep these things in mind. It's always going to be changing. It's always going to be connected to something else, and hopefully it's always going to be fun. And one of the best parts of this is the friends that you make and the team members you work with. And I'd like to introduce to you the person who a lot of people, I will say, this wouldn't have happened without him. This wouldn't have happened without the next person who wants to welcome you, Tandy Thompson, who is the president of New France, the other Colonial America. Tandy?
Thank you all. And I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody that's helped achieve this. If I were stand here and begin to name all the people that have helped, I'd be here for quite a while. So please know, all of you, and even those that weren't here today, that your contribution was vital to achieving today. Among those is our mayor, Paul Hessler, a gentleman who's been instrumental in bringing us the National Park Service designation, a gentleman who has been encouraging to all as he himself has gained a deeper understanding of the opportunities and challenges presented by this community as he's fulfilling his duties of office. Mayor, I hand the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you. As far as the National Park goes, that's not me at all. That's a lot of folks in this town that have been fighting and pushing for that for a lot of years. I just happen to be in the right place at the right time. So I thank everybody that everybody. That's what I want to focus on. First of all, I want to thank the Colonial Dames of Missouri and New France and the staff and everybody that's connected to this, because what they did here was they committed themselves to excellence. And I thank you for that. I thank you that you've invested in this community. And to steal a little bit of thunder from the chamber, their theme the other night was we work together and we grow together. And that's what I like what Jeff said. We're all in this together. We need to be one big happy family. That's tough with families, I know. But we can work together and we'll grow together. And this community is going to be better for it. Because when the visitor comes to this town, they're going to have a great experience and they're going to want to come back because they want to be a part of it, because they're going to feel something special when they leave this place. Especially when they see something like this, excellence. And that's what we got to do. And that's what we got to continue to do in our city, is do things with excellence and just be passionate and driven and have a purpose. And again, I want to thank you for all that you do, and I appreciate it. And I do. For me, I've learned a lot here in the last year, and a lot of history that I've learned that I didn't know, and it's been great. And it's just been great to be a part of it, a small part of it, because it's all about everybody here that makes this work. So thank you all very much.
Okay, Gina doesn't have anything to say, but she's got the ribbon.
Tell you where to go.
And I am going to ask Tandy and Christy to actually do the cutting. And do you need someone to help hold the ribbon?
Oh, they're going to have to hold it tight.
Okay.
We need an anchor. Suck it out here, an anchor.
Okay. All right.
She's the short one.
So, any chamber board members in this? Jason, Marcia, please come forward. So what will Okay, on the count of three. 1, 2, 3.
Before we go back inside, and there are refreshments downstairs. Wait, have any of you been downstairs?
No.
There's more. Yeah, we're at the first floor. But let's have, before we go down, could I ask all of you to come up here, line up in front of us, and look towards
Mr. Camera?
Yeah, Mr. Domsey's house, and so that we can all be a part of it. So why don't we all come on up? Don't be shy. And then twist around.
Kind of fun.
Yeah.
All right, who loves St. Genevieve?